the first two finals against the LeBron Cavs without Kevin Durant, you want Paul George probably over Klay.
But, maybe if you take, Klay in his prime and you put him on, the Clippers teams, the early ones, if Kawhi's healthy, then you got a problem.
What Stephen A said, I'm going to read it just so I quote it correctly. I don't like LeBron, and it will probably stay that way forever.
Stephen A's kind of the worst. He gets caught up in the mix of a lot of stuff, says a lot of things. That's his job, though.
ESPN released on their Twitter page this week an Icons photo. Within a few hours, they got killed in the comments and destroyed, so they took it down.
It used to be like ESPN's list and everything they used to put out back in the day for me was like the Bible, man. It was like law. Like if ESPN said it was true.
And Monica McNutt, who hosts multiple shows on ESPN, says, your jersey ties into Shedeur, who balled out in his first preseason game.
The jersey. Let's get into it because obviously this ties to one Shedeur Sanders who balled out in his first preseason game.
This is
I'm sorry, I apologize. Barry Sanders. But the tie, come on, the tie is the Sanders. Bear with me. Bear with me.
And you're looking at their faces, if you pause it, and he's like, this is Barry Sanders, right? Obviously,
you got people on your network that don't know the difference between Barry Sanders and Shedeur Sanders. It was wild to me. So it's not a mechanical bull
event, an
a
actual
real bull, right?
A bull riding
event. Punishment for losing the fantasy football league, right?
Yo, welcome back to the Can't Teach Tapes podcast with your boy Matt Ghanem and Todd Tomlinson. Getting excited here coming up to this fantasy draft. We also have some NBA and other sports topics to discuss in the beginning. Todd, where do you think we should start, man?
Man, let's say fantasy for last. I got some thoughts. I know you got some thoughts. I got a couple drafts coming up next weekend. I know a couple of my boys do too, so they want some of these gems. If you want to win your league, listen to what we have to say. We got some gems for you later, but let's get into a topic, man, that I heard that I thought was interesting. I know you probably have interest in too, and it's the whole, Paul George or Klay Thompson in their prime. Who are you taking? And the reason why I like this is a great, I think, topic, for a couple of reasons. One, I know you're obviously the biggest Warrior fan I know, but two great players in their prime, both with different skill sets. So, I want to pose a question to you first, right on that end. Paul George or Klay Thompson, if you swap them, would the Warriors win all those rings? What would each person's career look like? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, that's you put them both in their prime, of course, right? So obviously, I don't think we debate on what happens with Klay. I guess we could say with Klay, obviously he's a great shooter. Without Steph, maybe he doesn't have as much space. But I will say without Klay, Steph wouldn't potentially have as much space, right? So that's that. So I don't know where Klay ends up. Does Klay win a ring? Does Klay end up as a Hall of Famer? Obviously the talent level's there. He was an elite defender too, pre-injury, right? So he could guard anyone just as good as Paul George could pre-injury. So what I will say is, there's games like that game 6 against Oklahoma City when they were 73-9. If Paul George is on that team, assuming that all things the same, they're losing that game.
Losing the game.
Nobody's doing what Klay did. Maybe they're not down 3-1, right? Or down 3-2 at that point. They were down 3-1, but maybe they're not down 3-2. I will say that, the first two finals against the LeBron Cavs without Kevin Durant, you want Paul George probably over Klay, right?
I think so. Look, I think Klay was a perfect complement to Steph. Splash Brothers, right? I think the spacing on that team, the ball movement on that team, I think a lot of that goes away if you put Paul George. And I think Steph, so elite, he's still winning a ring probably. That team was great, but I think the ball movement slows down. I think Klay was just over time, just a better playoff performer. They gave him the nickname Playoff P, but if you look at the numbers and some of the stuff he did with the Clippers, I don't think he earned that at all. But I do think that I think length, and I think Paul George always played well against LeBron. You look at those Indiana teams, and I think to your point,
they were overmatched in those first two finals. Especially the first one. Like if the Cavs were healthy, they're winning that finals. Like it's not, I think they win in 5 or 6, right? So look, obviously you could say like, does Paul George play the Klay role? Does he stand in the corner? Does he move the ball? Or does he is he playing one-on-one screen and roll basketball, right? So assuming he plays the role, I just don't know if he would have played that role what they needed as well, which is why Klay is, if you put Kevin Durant in the mix, you want Klay 14 times out of 10. Right? Because of what he can do with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. So I'm only thinking about, I guess, pre-injury, pre-KD. I mean, I think they won 1 out of 2. Maybe they win 1 out of 2. I don't know. There's a scenario where they win both, right? Because they probably should have lost the first one. They probably should have won the second one. I mean, Paul George also, if you take a healthy Paul George and you put him in for Jimmy Butler in the past postseason, maybe they win one of those games. Paul George is an elite player and a scorer when he's by himself. So without Steph, you definitely want Paul George over Klay. With Steph, I mean, it's tough. Probably Klay. I mean, Klay and Steph fit together so perfectly, man.
I agree. I think it depends on what you're looking for. Both great elite players in their prime. To your point, Paul George is a better individual ISO scorer. And you look at Klay and some of the wild numbers he had with some of the, points he scored with only taking, 10 dribbles in a game.
11 dribbles, 37 right? Points in third quarter.
Just a wild amount of output without needing, to move him without the ball, catch and shoot, right? So it's all about what you need. Paul George is a better one-on-one offensive player. In his prime, obviously a great player. But, maybe if you take, Klay in his prime and you put him on, the Clippers teams, the early ones, if Kawhi's healthy, then you got a problem because, you got Kawhi, who's a great ISO player. You got Klay, who can stretch the floor. So I guess the answer is it really depends. But obviously Klay has proven to be a winner, albeit, alongside Steph and Kevin Durant in some instances. So, it's hard to judge. But man, I think Klay for those teams was the perfect fit. With or without KD, with the way the Warriors play, it was a perfect fit. You put Paul George in those teams, I don't know if they're as effective. Steph was so amazing and dominant during those runs. I think they probably still win. But yeah, it's a good debate, man. I don't know who I'm taking. If I'm starting a team and I have to pick between one of those two players, I guess it depends who else is on my roster. So, I'm a shooter, man. So I got a soft spot for shooters. Pause, but that's my I go with Klay, I think.
I will say too, the one differentiator between the two of them and Klay, and maybe the most since 2015 or so, maybe the most just cold, stone cold, ice in your veins, don't care when the moment is, like you're catching the ball in the wing again at OKC and just smashing those threes. I mean, right? You know what I mean? Like he was just like a robot in those situations. Zero fucks to give about how big the moment was. And maybe that's the differentiator between the two of them, because I can't say the way Paul George was or wasn't, but you could probably say he wasn't that,
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I'd agree, man. It's funny. They're both at a spot in their career now where both dealing, with injuries or older, not the players they used to be. So even at this point, outside of their prime, you going into next year, who you taking?
I mean, I think the upside at this point for Paul George is higher, right? Yeah. If you need someone, but I mean, shit, maybe Klay comes out and shoots 44% from the three and just
make the stallion, man. Yeah, look, they're saying he's gonna come out. He's over there eating soul food and fried catfish, and she's cooking for him. He seems happy. You know what I'm saying? Might get a little bit of swag bag.
Let's talk about that.
My guy might be either he's gonna look terrible or he's gonna look great. But yeah, I'm taking Paul George. But let's talk about it. Let's talk.
We need to talk about this. First of all, the first thing that threw me off is fried catfish with pasta and red sauce. Right? That's an odd combination. I've never seen that in my life. But on top of that, you have the store-bought rolls from the bag. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Those little rolls that you have when you're a kid. I haven't seen those in years. And then fast forward to when he's eating it on a TV tray. Right? Like, I don't know what they're thinking about. I mean, obviously, look, eating on a TV tray isn't a bad thing. I'm sure a lot of people do it, but what are you thinking about? Like, sit at the dinner table if you're going to try to post it online. Also, that food, I mean, it looked like some, I mean, I'm in Big Bear right now. It looked like some food from Big Bear. It's just like not it, bro. You're not eating that shit. Who's eating fried catfish with pasta sauce that clearly came out of a jar? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what Klay's doing. We've never seen him like this. He's never had a public girlfriend the whole time he's been in the league. So to your point,
he's been tied to a lot of girls, but to your point, he's never really been public with it. He has been involved with,
Of course,
it's different though. So they've all been like, supermodel type, more. Yeah, I'd say like reserved in nature, and now he's with the hood one, man. So who knows? Come out and start balling.
Bro, you're not gonna have a kid, and maybe this is gonna be a poor take, but you want to have a kid with someone who has those types of songs on the DSPs? Like, you can't have that. Like, you don't want your kids to hear that shit. Like, obviously she's trying to make money, and I'm not hating on that, but if you're looking at it from Klay's standpoint, and maybe it doesn't go anywhere, right? So to your point, he's either gonna come out like 2016 Klay, or he's gonna come out like, Klay, who played 30 minutes and scored 0 points in the play-in game against the Lakers.
TBD, bro. We about to see.
But that food was ass, bro.
Didn't look good to me. I like fried catfish personally, but that, to your point, the mix of that and like spaghetti, I don't know. Maybe we're missing out, bro. But I didn't look good to your boy. Nah.
If wifey's not serving it up, like wifey would never come up with that combination to me, and she eats all that stuff. Like, I don't know.
We'll pass.
I don't know.
Strong pass.
Yeah, that's a hard. Okay. So, all right. So let's move into another. You picked the last topic. I'm taking this one. Obviously, I'm going to talk about your boy LeBron. There's a lot of things at play here, but Stephen A said, I'm going to read it just so I quote it correctly. I don't like LeBron, and it will probably stay that way forever. Things have gone on behind my back, trying to ruin my reputation and integrity.
Well, Stephen A's kind of the worst. He gets caught up in the mix of a lot of stuff, says a lot of things. That's his job, though. I don't know what LeBron did to Stephen A. He's talking about ruining his reputation and stuff. Maybe he called him a liar when things were true. I don't know. But that feud has been going on for a while. I know Stephen A ruffles feathers, but that's why he's so big, man. If he was reserved and wasn't having controversial takes or calling people out, he might not even have a job, right? So that's funny. At the same time, I don't know why LeBron's engaging in stuff with Stephen A. Smith, right? Like it makes you look kind of weak from that standpoint. And obviously, I love LeBron as a basketball player, so let's get that out the way. As a basketball player, I don't know him as a man or as a person, right? So that's fine. I don't give a shit about, Stephen A. Smith and, the beef that he has. And I'm sure LeBron, you would think, doesn't care, but apparently he does, because he responds and, gets caught up in that. So, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that and Stephen A. and the whole getting involved and the takes and them having beef and remember LeBron confronting him at the game? This past was it this past year?
It was because of his Bronny takes, right?
Yeah, right. So you talk about, I guess, and I don't remember the take exactly, but maybe LeBron took offense. He's like, hey, and I think LeBron said this, like, talk about me, but when you talk about my son. But at the same time, your son's in the NBA now, bro. So it is what it is.
It was something about, it wasn't about his basketball. It was something about how his dad put him there and things like that. So he's like, obviously, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm being
Nepotism.
a father or something, which is weird. I thought that was fake, honestly. I thought that was fake because ESPN's obviously been struggling, which we're going to talk about. I thought that was fake. I thought it was fake, or like it was staged or whatever, but obviously it isn't, or maybe it still is. I don't know. What I will say is, obviously, we're doing some, we see people like Stephen A. and it motivates us to do what we're doing right here. We're talking the same way he would. Obviously, you played at a higher level than I did. We both played basketball, but Stephen A. is probably my favorite non-hooper from a take standpoint, where you're going to like take his word and like, he gives takes that I appreciate personally.
Sure.
You watch like Skip Bayless or something and you just like, you know what I mean? He's just obviously trying to get ratings. Maybe Stephen A. is too, but I feel like he has more knowledge than most folks that didn't hoop, right? He goes on Gil's Arena and he's sitting there with Brandon Jennings and Gil, and he's giving his takes and they're listening. Right. It's not like if Skip Bayless was there, I don't think he even would be, but they would roast him. You know what I mean?
Sure,
so
for sure.
So that's where I'm going to start with that. My second thing is, obviously LeBron is one of the best basketball players of all time, the most talented basketball player of all time. He's played longer than anyone. He holds all the records. He'll continue to play at a high level. He's a top 10 basketball player last year on a bad day. So, what I think is, if this is not staged, just knowing what I know about how this all works, over the past couple of years, my guess is they don't like each other, and what made it worse was, how he called out what LeBron did. And that's fine because Bronny averaged 1.6, I think, minutes a game, or 1.6 points a game, 6 minutes a game on a below 500 Pac-12 team, right? And he got drafted after his freshman year with not playing in the second round, which generally is like maybe you get cut, maybe you're on a two-way. He got a fully guaranteed contract, right? He started the season on the team. So look, what you did is exactly what Stephen A. said you did, but nobody's allowed to say it, right? So what does that tell you? That he has a lot of influence and people aren't scared to say it for whatever reason. Either it's staged and Stephen A. said it, or, they've had enough, beef in the past, or maybe he just, he feels comfortable enough in his spot to say a little bit. Because what he said is things happen behind my back. He wouldn't say what he did, right? And if he felt super safe, he'd probably say that. So LeBron obviously has a tons of pool, right? Him and Rich Paul, like the stuff that they're doing in the NBA draft, just these things that they're doing. I mean, he's on a Jay-Z level of influence. So he probably tried to get Stephen A., canceled or whatever you want to call it from a contractual standpoint, right? Because he's making millions and millions of dollars now. He's got all of these things. He's got multiple radio shows now. He's got the number one morning show on ESPN, right? First Take still. So, he's got some leverage, but I think LeBron probably has more. And maybe it's at a tipping point because LeBron's leverage, I mean, arguably could go down. Maybe it'll become like Jordan where he becomes more prominent post NBA. But if not, then this is his highest level of leverage, and this guy's saying something about him. So, I'm sure LeBron tried to do something, right? Or it's completely staged. But it seems to me like in the way Stephen A. first reacted to, he was like very frustrated and emotional about it. He seems a little bit more like he's kind of like digested it and it's a little more calculated now. But it's obviously interesting to see how it'll go because LeBron's also got his pod. So he's sort of popping into, this arena as well. So it's very interesting. Obviously, two very elite people. Maybe Stephen A. Smith is the GOAT as a sportscaster or commentator or talking head or whatever you want to call it. And LeBron's arguably a GOAT. So, it's a very interesting to see how this unfolds,
Ghosts, brother.
Right there.
Hunting.
Shout out. I was going to ask if that was trophy hunting.
It is. I would agree. And, to your point earlier, Stephen A. Smith has takes, but they seem genuine. They're controversial, but not afraid to say them, right? So he does ruffle feathers, excuse me. Skip Bayless, a lot of times when he's saying shit, it's just like he's saying it. It's so outlandish. He's saying it and he doesn't believe it. He's saying it to get the ratings. Stephen A. Smith comes off genuine in his takes and isn't afraid to say them. And, he's there to give the controversial takes and what he thinks and what he believes. So, yeah, to your point, it must have been something that really, really was bad. And that may be something that, LeBron was trying to do something to, to affect his career. Because at this point, I don't know, you would think that LeBron has had thick enough skin over the years. I mean, he's been the most scrutinized player really in NBA history, honestly, with everything. So you think his skin would be tougher, but maybe when it came to Bronny and that whole thing, he couldn't handle it. But at this point in his career, man, he's got to let that go. And, it's up to Bronny and LeBron to prove that he belongs in the NBA. It wouldn't be an issue if Bronny goes out there and is balling and is playing great, then you don't got to say a word, right? But you don't want to prove a point. And Stephen F., his point's being proven right now, right? So, yeah, man, it's probably a little bit of an, just maybe even embarrassment, from that standpoint. But we'll see how it plays out. I just know Stephen A. Smith is going to have good things to say about LeBron moving forward, and I can't wait to see the type of shit that transpires next year between those two, right?
What'll be interesting for us to see is how Bryce James plays at U of A, and if he balls out, what happens? Because the reality is, if Bryce James hoops and he averages like 13 points a game on a good team as a freshman, you don't go into the draft if you're not a top 10 pick after your freshman year, right? So if he's actually good and plays and starts and is impactful, and you can see the growth, obviously he's much bigger than Bronny James is, and he doesn't go to the draft, that proves Stephen A. Smith's point even more, right? I don't know why he didn't just let him get better in college and just let him go play somewhere, let him get better, right? Unless maybe he thought, if I'm out of the NBA in 3 years, unless I own a team, what do I do? Maybe he'll never make the NBA. So from a father standpoint, I suppose maybe that was his thought process.
There's an opportunity there. And they accomplished it, right? So maybe to your point, it's like we got to do it right now. I don't think Bronny James is like in the grand scheme like a bad player. He's not, a contributor on an NBA team. He's not that good, but I think if he would have stayed in college, he could have, been solid. Went to the G League where he played well this year, right? To your point, not getting drafted after scoring that many points on, below average USC team.
You're not even starting, bro.
We have an opportunity here. We know we can execute it. Playing with, his son is a historic moment that's never happened, right, in the NBA. So, it goes down with like obviously, the Griffeys and something that's really, really cool. And if you can do it now, why wait? So I guess that's why they did it. I think Bryce. I think he could be a good player. I don't think he's going to have that big of an impact. Yeah, I think UVA is really good this coming year, so I don't know how much of a role he'll have. If I had to guess, he's going to be there for a couple of years. I think with LeBron's influence, he'll get a chance in the NBA because that's the way it is, whether he deserves it or not. But I gotta imagine he's going to be there for a couple of years, or it's going to look crazy.
And I will say, like, I can't remember a time where a bench player on a bad team who was a freshman, A, entered the draft, B, got drafted, and obviously it's impossible that they would ever get a fully guaranteed contract in the second round. It just doesn't happen. So
it's a lot of dumb players who left him to go to the draft. He's never heard about them because they weren't that good, and then they didn't get drafted.
If you didn't start, would you go to the draft as a freshman in your team? It just doesn't.
Obviously not, unless I had counseled that I was going to get drafted for sure. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean?
Like Victor Page went and didn't get drafted, but that was because he was failing out of Georgetown. He was actually a hooper, but that's different.
I love Victor Page. We'll get to him.
Yeah, Victor Page, a hoop, bro.
Hell yeah, him and AI, man, those Georgetown days. But yeah. So it'll be interesting, but it'll be interesting to see too, like what happens with Bronny once LeBron does retire. Right.
Agreed. So we had two very interesting things that happened in the past week regarding ESPN, which we just mentioned. There's one of them's a lot worse than the other, but the one that's not as worse is awful, right? So one of them's on the whole. It's kind of like a product of the situation. So let's go through the one that's not as bad in my book, and maybe you could tell me if you think the other one's better or not. But ESPN's released on their Twitter page this week an icons photo. It was one of those mashups with a bunch of like caricatures of of a bunch of different players essentially, and within a few hours, they got killed in the comments and destroyed, so they took it down. You have Bron on there. You got the Manning brothers. You got Ohtani. You got Steph, right? And then it gets weird because there's probably like 50 people on this. You got Windhorse. You got Mina Kimes, which is like neither one of them are iconic or legendary by any stretch. No, right,
but ESPN put it out, so fine. They work at ESPN, whatever.
Yeah, right? So throw it up here. If my guy Alan, when he's cutting this up, if he could throw this picture up here right now, then it goes and there's 25 different WNBA players mixed in with LeBron and Peyton and Eli and Steph and Shohei and whatever. There's 3 total baseball players, 3 total hockey players, which obviously like baseball and hockey, whatever. But you can't have 3 total baseball players and 25 WNBA players. First of all, I don't think you and I could name 25 WNBA players maybe ever if we sat here, gun to our head to do it, but let alone 25 that are playing now, 0 chance. So what are your thoughts on this and what are they doing here?
It's them continuously trying to shove the WNBA down our throat, which is fine, right? I'm all for, the building of the WNBA brand in large part, obviously, because of Caitlin Clark bringing more recognition to the game. Which is fine. But for them to put 25, considering them iconic, and to your point, you got, Peyton Manning, one of the best, quarterbacks of all time, Eli, 2-time Super Bowl champion. You got LeBron, you got Steph, champions. You got you said 3 total baseball players in there. You got 25 current WNBA players in there. That word iconic, if you want to use a different word, but if you're going to put iconic and put some of those other faces up there are not 25 iconic WNBA players playing the game. Or there's not that the word iconic, unless, I have a different definition of that word, but I think it's ESPN trying to like shove this down our throat, and they're trying to build the game. Build it all you want, but if you're going to put a graphic up there about iconic athletes, this has nothing to do with, women or men. It's about just the sport of the WNBA. There's, not 25 iconic players in the league. Then you can give us 3 baseball players. 3. I think it's a narrative. I don't know why, and they're overdoing it to a point to where it's just like you can't. They're becoming uncredible to me. You know what I'm saying? Like usually when ESPN puts out a list or something, or you're saying it's not just a graphic, right? You're just becoming like uncredible. Like I can't take anything you say. It's all with a grain of salt now when I see stuff like that. Like it used to be like ESPN's list and everything they used to put out back in the day for me was like the Bible, man. It was like law. Like if ESPN said it was true, but now it's like credibility, like for me out the door. It's becoming bad. There's another situation to get to in a second that I'm pretty sure that I know about that happened this past week on ESPN, which just makes it lose even more credibility for some of the people that they're putting in positions to give their takes and their opinion. So do better, bruh. Do better, ESPN. You're killing me with some of this shit, and some of the stuff is becoming unwatchable, unfortunately, for me.
I mean, I think ESPN is unwatchable, right? It has been for a long time. Nobody's watching First Take, even though it's their number one morning show. I mean, I'll watch like clips of it or something online, but you're not going to watch. And I won't even watch First Take. I actually haven't watched a clip of First Take in forever. Here's the problem. So they obviously why do they have current WNBA players and then Peyton and Eli? Peyton and Eli do that like ESPN, or they do the Monday Night Football, the ESPN 2, where they talk during it. So that's why they're on there. Right, they have to put Bron on there. They have to put Steph on there. And then they stick all these WNBA players. It almost feels like they're like plants, like industry plants in music. Where, like Tate McRae, for example, she can't sing, and she looks like she's 16 years old, so she's not attractive, at least to me. But she's on everything, right? She's on the number one Morgan Wallen song. Like you could substitute almost any female artist in there, and the song would improve. You could take her off of it and let him do it by himself. The song would be better. But I'll
take your word for it. I don't know country music like you, so I'll take your word for it.
She can't sing, dude. She can't sing at all, which some people say that's what she's supposed to sound like. And she's not even really country. She's like pop, but whatever. So Angel Reese is on this thing. She's a 90 in the NBA 2K game. And she's sitting here saying she wants everyone to buy her shoes and wear them like Jordan. It's like, you don't live in reality. Like, stop that shit. That's fucking crazy. Nobody's buying those fucking shoes at all because no kid wants to rebound. Right? No kids thinking about rebounding. 0 people are thinking about rebounding that are below the age of 15 until their coach forces them to. Nobody's doing that. So nobody cares about your shoes. They're ugly. They're Reeboks. And you're trash. Right?
Trash. Yeah.
You're trash.
She sucks. I'm sorry. Yeah.
She's terrible. You shoot every shot, like 80% of the 90% of the shots you take are in the restricted circle, and you shoot below 50% from the field. Right? You know what I mean? It's bad. Like you stink. Right? So it's a narrative that they're pushing on us, which everyone's pushing it on us now, right? They turned down a $250K minimum salary, which I think it's $60K now, and $1 million max, which is $250 now, and they say it's not enough. And the league's losing money still, even though it's becoming more prominent. The only thing I could think, I looked up to see if ESPN or ABC or that conglomerate, Disney, was a part owner in the WNBA, because obviously the NBA is a big investor and then there's private. It looks like they're not. So if that's not the case, they have a long-term media deal with them. So maybe if they push it long enough, they can charge so much money on the back end of that deal for commercials and endorsements and shit that maybe if they push it, it'll make, because they're struggling. So maybe they think like in the last 5 years of that deal, we can make bread if people think that this shit's good, but it's not fucking good. Okay. So moving on to the thing you mentioned. It was, I don't know what show it was on. It was one of these shows that nobody watches anymore. Drewski comes on wearing a backwards. It's baby blue, I think. I don't know if baby's the term.
It was.
Yeah. It's not a powder blue, Chargers blue, but it's that like kind of shiny lightning blue with silver stripes, a number 20 jersey that says Sanders. He turns it around backwards, sits down, and Monica McNutt, who hosts multiple shows on ESPN, says, your jersey ties into Shedeur, who balled out in his first preseason game. And like, you're looking at their faces, like if you pause it and he's like, this is Barry Sanders, right? Obviously, an iconic running back, an elite, first round
legend,
ballot Hall of Famer. Like he's just a legend. Like he retired early, obviously, but he was about as good as you could possibly be, especially for his time. Untackleable. The dude would run backwards like he was playing Tecmo Bowl, and she says that. Now let's dive into this real quick, because obviously Shedeur Sanders, not anywhere near the most prominent Sanders, maybe the most prominent Sanders now. We know Deion's jersey's number 1 or 21. He's wearing a 20, so it's not Deion. Shedeur wears 12. Okay, that's the first thing, right? Right. So that's the first thing. It's not his number, right? It's clearly not his team because it's blue and silver. It's not brown or orange or white and orange and brown or whatever. And it's a 20, not a 12. So there's 3 things, that you could just say it has nothing to do with him. And she literally says that. Like, you can make a mistake. I just said it's not a 1 jersey. It's a 21 jersey, right? I made a mistake on Deion's number, but, she had no clue. I don't want to go out on a limb as far as to say she doesn't know who Barry Sanders is, but there's a fucking chance she doesn't know who Barry Sanders is. It's a coin flip. Maybe 60% chance she's never heard that name, and she's co-hosting a show on ESPN, and she's the one giving the color, right? Because if you're not the player, you're kind of giving some color there, and it's like when you throw that in with the icons thing, what the fuck is ESPN doing? 24-hour sports coverage, and you have this woman, and it's not because she's a woman, it's because she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about, right? There's a lot of shit I don't know about. I don't want to go up there, and I know about baseball because I played baseball fucking for a million years, it feels like, but I don't know shit about who's playing in major leagues now, and I wouldn't pretend to go up there and talk about it. But Barry Sanders, if you don't know who Barry Sanders is, and you don't see that jersey and immediately think Detroit Lions, Barry Sanders, you got to get the fuck off TV. You can't do it anymore.
Couldn't agree more. It's embarrassing, for real. When I first saw it, I thought I couldn't believe it. To your point, it's the mistake it's almost impossible to make. You know what I'm saying? If you know anything about sports, and for her, I know Monica McNutt for what was WNBA and covering NBA stuff. If that's the case, she doesn't know shit about any other sports. Don't put her on a platform covering everything, right? The fact that it's ESPN, the biggest sports network of all time, ever, on a primetime show. Shout out Juicy, by the way, one of my favorite skit comedians. He's hilarious. But for her to say that, it's you got people on your network that don't know the difference between Barry Sanders and Shedeur Sanders. It was wild to me. So again, ESPN, I'm all about giving people opportunity and mixing it up, but you just lose, again, all credibility with me when you got people on TV not knowing what the hell they're talking about, giving takes that make no fucking sense, confusing players. Used to never be that way, but now it's becoming, almost unwatchable. So, I do watch First Take from time to time, with obviously inside the NBA, that whole deal. There's some things, but, for the most part, I still watch SVP. I watch the college football show in the morning. But aside from that, all this other stuff, and the pregame NBA stuff that they had last year with some of these people was pretty fucking bad too.
It's bad.
Yeah. So, I there's some people I like who give decent takes, but ESPN's falling off a map. They got to change it quick. I know the ratings are terrible, not getting better. They got to figure it out because I don't watch, man. I get all my stuff now from just the internet, and watching people that I, respect and trust on there. But this stuff to me is unwatchable, bro.
I don't know what they're calling Inside the NBA next year, but it's going to be on ESPN, so we'll be watching that shit, watching Shaq and Chuck and them. But
they might save it, bro, and hopefully they don't try to change any of that.
They need to leave them the fuck alone.
Leave it the fuck alone. Don't give them advice. Don't say shit. You let them go in there and do their thing. I don't want to. Don't say anything. Just give them the platform and the cameras and the studio in order to do their show. But if they ruin that, I'm done with anything on ESPN.
What I'm worried that they're going to do is they're going to put a former WNBA player on there, and they're going to fuck it up because then they can't say all the shit that they want to say. Leave it alone.
Yeah, I don't need a WNBA player giving me NBA advice. And I don't need an NBA player giving WNBA advice. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. You got people who have been doing this for a long time, whose opinions people respect with great.
They're great at it. Great at it.
Great.
There's comedy, there's entertainment, there's hoops, and there's all the above intertwined, and you don't know what you're going to see. It's like watching a game. The best thing to do is to go sit close at an NBA game because you can hear everything, you can see everything. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Because the outcome's not predetermined. When you watch their show, Chuck might say something crazy. Shaq might say something crazy, and that's why we watch.
Exactly.
Right?
You got Ernie mediating, right? You got Kenny who's going to, kind of play the middle, but it's the best, man. The mix of them, it's legendary. Yeah, ESPN, just don't mess it up, please. For God's sake, don't mess that up.
Yeah, agreed. So, ESPN's out of their mind in summary. Hopefully, I just don't know. Don't fucking confuse Barry Sanders for a 5th round quarterback who, I think he got sacked 5 times on 4 drives in his final preseason game, and then was confused why they didn't let him run the 2-minute drill at the end of the game to win the game. And obviously, homeboy, I forget his name, their 3rd string or 4th string quarterback came in and got some penalties, but also had like a 25-yard run or 20-yard run for a first down to kick field goal, won the game.
Maybe I don't know.
No, Gabriel balled out, dude. Gabriel balled out.
He's looking better.
Joe Flacco balled. And Gabriel balled, bro. Gabriel, clear cut number 2 on that team. Yeah. Way better.
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur had a good first game, but you can clearly see that he has a problem stepping up in the pocket. Likes to, backpedal and move backwards, and that's become an issue, man. So not good. Did not look good. It'll be interesting to see because you got Kenny Pickett still, who's dude,
he didn't even play, so he's going to get cut or traded. Right? He's still got some upside. What I will say is, I'll say a positive thing about LeBron. Bronny doesn't do anything fucking stupid. He doesn't do anything fucking stupid, right?
He stays quiet.
Jordan's kids are a gravesite, right? Bronny and Bryce do the right thing. And then you saw Shedeur Sanders was, locked up downfield with a receiver, downfield block, and he punched him in the face with a helmet on, which is still the fucking craziest thing to me. Why are you going to hit someone with a helmet on, right? So what happens to Shedeur Sanders today? Obviously, he gets cut. Right? Yeah. Cut. So, I mean, maybe he'll make it onto another team or whatever, but that was the rub with drafting Shedeur is there's no consequences for these kids. They start no matter what. Their dad's been their coach their entire fucking life, right? It doesn't mean Shedeur's not talented and that he can't be good. I wouldn't fucking pick him, but it's also because of all those reasons. That doesn't mean from a football standpoint, sure. Like in the game yesterday, he was playing with a 3rd string offensive line. So it's kind of hard to judge specifically, but what he does is what you do when you play for Colorado. You think you can outrun the defensive lineman, and you end up taking a 7-yard sack into a 15-yard sack, and he did that fucking 4 or 5 times, right? You just can't do that shit, dude. You drop back, fucking get rid of the ball. But anyways,
hey, you said something nice about LeBron, though, man. This progress.
I did. No, dude, he obviously did something right because Bronny does what he's supposed to do. He's not doing dumb shit. He's not fighting. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do, and so does Bryce. Does the same thing.
And that's the last thing I'll say about Bronny. He didn't put himself in this position, right? So it's none of this is his fault. He's just trying to be the best player that he can. He's getting, just annihilated from, a lot of people, and he's stayed quiet, just kept his head down, and is doing what he can. So to your point, Bronny's doing things the right way. Seems like a good kid. I hope he, continues to get better and carves out a role for himself. But yeah, man, you saying the nice thing about LeBron is it's refreshing, dude. I want to see more of that if you don't mind.
He's a top 3 NBA player of all time. You know what I mean? Okay. But what I will say, the one thing I wish Bronny did do is I wish he went to the Luka contract extension signing and whatever weird concert they went to afterwards, because you're the last guy on the bench. You got to go to that shit. I don't care.
I agree, man. But yeah, I agree.
It doesn't really matter, but
maybe his dad, I don't know, maybe his dad's pulling a lot of the strings, man. I'm sure LeBron was not there. Yeah, exactly.
His dad said you're not going because I might get traded, and he's not like I'm getting traded. We're getting traded.
That's what happened.
Kids, pack up. Pack up, right?
Oh, yeah, they might keep the house in LA, but we're going somewhere else.
Kids, pack up. Now he's retiring to that house, but kids, pack up. We're getting traded. So maybe, one other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, and maybe this is me being stupid, but I didn't realize, maybe it's because I was 10 years old at the time, but Jordan averaged 41 in a final series, right? So last night I went and watched Game 4 of the 93 NBA Finals against the Suns. They had just lost at home. They're playing in the United Center. I mean, Jordan, I think he had 33 or 35 in the first half. And he wasn't shooting well. He shot a good percentage, but his mid-range game just wasn't really working. He had a little bit of post game. They put KJ on him, and he's too big. It'd be back him down. And then they put Dan Marley on him, and it's just it looked like nobody's guarding him. But he goes to the rim. And, he got fouled a decent amount, but left-handed layup, right-handed layup, floater, layup package, all over the place. I mean, he was just, every time he got the ball, just one-on-one go by you, one-on-one go by you. I mean, and it was a kind of an effortless 55. Like, I remember I was watching last night, and I was watching a little bit of it because I was also reading something. I was watching a little bit of it on mute, and so I was watching, and I flipped the sound back on, and they're like, "Oh, Jordan's like 6 of 9. He has like 15." And I was like, I don't even think I even saw him score because it was just like layup. Like there was nothing spectacular that he did. Nobody could guard him. He averaged 41 in that series, which is crazy. He also has 8 finals games over 50, which is crazy. Right. And so that's the difference, man. Like, look, you watch some of these players that come off the bench, like that are on these teams, like for the Bulls and the Suns, like they would never play in the NBA today. Right. So obviously the NBA is more talented globally now than it was then. Right. And so you look at that, but I mean, Jordan was just different when it mattered most. He just, like, they had just lost. He doesn't want this thing to go 7 games. Like, he wants to win this thing. He doesn't want Charles Barkley to win a championship. And he just goes crazy and makes sure that they don't. Like, throughout the entire game, they had 40. He had 20. They had 60. He had 30. I mean, at the end, at one point, he had 50. The Bulls had 100. Like, he was going to make sure that they won that game. And that's what he did in that series. And that's how you end up getting 41 in a final series. And remember, he's not shooting threes. Correct. All these things are in the paint or mid-range, right? So it was just nuts. I had to go watch it.
The GOAT. And the craziest part about that and that stat is that if people go back and look, the NBA teams weren't scoring triple digits very often, back then. The game has changed because of people like Steph Curry. The offenses have become much more high octane. The rules have allowed teams to score more, right? So Jordan averaging 41 in that time. I went back and watched The Last Dance, and you look at a lot of the scores in the finals. It was like, 89 to 91, 85 to 90. So Jordan averaging 41. And to your point, during a time where the 3 ball wasn't as prominent in the NBA, it was a lot more slow down, run your sets. Just basketball in general back then was that, you have plays that you're running, they're running the triangle, they're slowing the ball down a lot. It's not as much run and gun, especially with the Bulls. They'd want to push the ball off the floor a little bit, see what they have, but then pull it out and, and run their shit. So the fact that he's, scoring 55, averaging 41, is just a testament to how great, Jordan was. So just wild. Again, the GOAT, the one player who would definitely translate, even though he, wasn't shooting the 3 ball, wasn't a great 3-point shooter. But again, I think if it was as prominent, Jordan is, such a competitor that he would have probably became one of the best 3-point shooters in the league just because that was his mindset. But he didn't have to. He was able to get to the free throw line. His mid-range was one of the best we've ever seen. So that's crazy. And I didn't even know that until you told me that the other night, that he averaged 41 in that series. So
when I read that, I was like, I'm going to watch this shit. I want to see what it looks like and just watch it. Because obviously I watched this series when I was a kid, I remember specifically at least watching a few of the games. But, I mean, just going to rewatch it and just watching. And he just gets the ball and he just goes, man. And you get surprised. Like it's almost like Steph, where you're surprised when he misses. Like he misses like a 17-foot pull-up where there's not a hand in his face because he gets up so quick, and you're just like,
how do you miss that?
Like you're just confused at why he's missing.
If you remember that series, he had a chip on his shoulder because I think he said Jerry Krause and some other people in the organization loved Dan Marley and thought he was a great defender. He goes, "Oh, you guys think he's a great defender? I'll show you if he's a good defender or not. I'm gonna go out here and torch this motherfucker." And
there was
just toyed with the guy.
There was a segment in that game where they showed like a few different blow-bys that Jordan did, and the announcers are like, "Look, the second Jordan like his little jab and goes by him, and Dan turns, he's already yelling for help, and he's mad that there's not help there. Like Jordan's not even all the way by him, and he's already yelling for help, right? And Dan Marley was a good defender and a really good player, obviously, but it's just Jordan's just different, bro.
Different.
I mean, Jordan looked like it was almost like if you took someone from today and put him back in like the 60s. Like it looked like that, how quickly he was going by everyone. Easy. And then I think he had KJ on him, and he was my favorite move when I was growing up, where it's like you pump fake, take one dribble, pull up, right? And it's just like that's unstoppable. If they even freeze a little bit on the pump fake, because then they start moving. And by the time they start moving, you're already up in the air. He hit KJ with a couple of those, and it was just like, man, like that's about as defeated as you could be,
Yep. That series, they didn't stand a chance, bro.
Nah, but let's get everyone into, if you had 15 or 20 minutes and you haven't studied for this fantasy, you haven't looked at anything, we're going to give you guys a crash course right now.
Quick.
I don't know. I know Todd plays in a weird league with like 37 quarterbacks and 14 flexes and all that stuff. So I don't know
Hate
if we're
that
going to go
league.
through that.
No, we're going to talk through the regular, standard league. We wanted to get into the whole super flex thing, but standard PPR league. If you want some tidbits and some gems, I know a lot of y'all got your draft coming up this weekend. Money's on the line, and some pretty bad punishments, depending on what league you're in, on the line too. Heard of some wild shit happening if you lose your league. So if you want to avoid that, listen up. So,
yeah, real quick too.
Man, what do you got?
We had one of the homies in our league. Shout out to Rod because he actually did it. A couple people didn't. He was supposed to go ride a bull at Buffalo Chip, which is like an hour north of Phoenix, and it's
not a mechanical bull
event. An
a
actual
bull, right?
A bull riding event.
This is the punishment for losing the fantasy football league, right?
Which it's not the punishment anymore, but it was.
Okay, but it was, right? That's crazy shit.
Yes.
But continue.
So people are in there. There's like a $2,500 prize, but there's like actual cowboys and like rodeo people up there. Rod's like in there thinking that he's just going to hop up on there. Like he's, played D1 football, could still dunk the ball. He's my height, super athletic dude, So he thinks I could just do this. It's not that hard. He gets up there. I think he's second or third. I can't remember. His horse's name is Black Frost. Okay. You will not, if you're listening to this, or Rod will never forget Black Frost, because on the first buck, right? Because you're supposed to kind of bounce with him. I don't really know how it works. But on the first buck, Rod went down, horse went up, right? Rod feels something immediately, doesn't know what to do. And he essentially falls down and he's like trying to walk off. But like he had this whole celebration plan for when he beat the bull. Like he was going to do the Stone Cold Steve Austin 2 beers thing, right? So he like wants to still go do that. But he's also got his emotions and his adrenaline's flowing. So he's not really feeling it. Right, he kind of does that, but he knows it's fucked up. So they go to get in an Uber, and he wants to just go home. It's the night before like my 40th birthday party where we had like all that crazy stuff go on and stuff. It was a great time. And Rod wanted to go. He was in town for that, so he's like, I'm going to do my fantasy football thing. But his fantasy football thing was from during COVID, so he actually did it before somebody else that was supposed to do it. And Rink's like, no, you need to go to the ER. So they take him to an ER that's not a level 1 trauma center, and they're like, dude, this isn't good. Like, thank God you didn't go home. You're going to have internal bleeding. And they put him in an ambulance to go to a real level 1 trauma center, which is like right by Dr. Lee's office in Old Town. He fractured his pelvis, both sides, clean break when that happened. And he would have died if he went home. Like he would have died. He had to have this surgery. I don't think he could like run or anything for months, right? He was on crutches.
Sure.
So this is from a fantasy football to get back to fantasy football. So we actually don't have a punishment anymore. Don't do that. And don't ride a bull ever. You're not a professional. Don't do it. Just like you wouldn't go try to tackle Derrick Henry. Don't fucking do this. We haven't had a punishment because nobody could agree. There's a couple people that haven't done their punishments from the last couple of years. Bobby dressed up as a girl. He wore a girl's outfit for a golf round on our golf trip, which that's a pretty, I don't want to say benign because I don't want to do that shit, but it's benign compared to riding a bull.
Shout out to Bobby.
Bob did it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bob. But anyways, so make sure you guys know what we're about to tell you, because we're going to give you 15, 20 minutes that might save you from a near life ending injury. All right.
For sure.
Okay. So first things first, there's basics here, right? Couple things about fantasy. Of course, you guys already know you're going to have your list with all the players on it. You're going to go by the rankings and things like that. The first couple rounds are pretty much selected for you, right? These lists are there. It's pretty much, there's a consensus opinion on who you pick. It's obviously, it goes Jamar Chase, right? You know what I mean? There's top receivers, it goes Bijan number 2, and then you go as a CD Lamb, Justin Jefferson, right? So those things are easy. What I will say is generally, if you take a peek at the over-under wins on the Vegas odds, right? Avoid the bottom teams: Titans, Jets, Panthers, Raiders, Browns, Saints, Giants, Dolphins. Not at all costs, but you don't want to reach on someone. There's one receiver on these teams that'll get a ton of yards. There's one running back that's worth having. The quarterbacks aren't worth having outside of probably Justin Field if you get him late because he runs for so many touchdowns, right? So that's a general thing, right? You want upside. You want to be on good offenses, not bad offenses. Right. The reason Jamar Chase is probably the best fantasy player of all time is he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's got, one of the best, he's in one of the best receiving cores in the NFL, right? You have T Higgins, you have good sets of tight ends. and your defense is fucking terrible, and it's worse this year than it was last year. So what does that tell you? You're going to be fucking throwing the ball the whole time, and you're the best player, and Joe Burrow throws it to you all the time. So that's why he's so good. He's so good because he's so good, but he's also so good because of all the other things that you need to consider. So if you leave here with anything, which I'm going to go through my sleepers and some late picks and some things that I think make sense, but generally, whichever one you get stuck with, if you're in the top 6, you have an elite running back or you have an elite receiver. If you're in a standard league, PPR, where you have a flex and you play 2 running backs, 2 receivers, if you end up with Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, or Justin Jefferson, you almost have to go running back with your next 2 picks. And inverse, I hope I don't get stuck at 6, because then I don't know if I'm going to pick one of my receivers or I'm going to go Jahmyr Gibbs, just because David Montgomery, I have PTSD from him last year. But let's say you get Saquon, you got to go receiver. You just have to.
Yep.
Unless something fucking crazy happens and, you get Jamar Chase and somehow Nico Harris is available at the end of the 2nd round, right? Or Nico Collins, or Drake London, you fucking take them and you have 2 anchor receivers and you don't go running back. But, if the normal shit happens, it's receiver, running back, vice versa. What do you got for him?
I'd agree with everything you said. Also, I'm looking at, if you look historically in fantasy football and players who have finished, a year at the top, generally speaking, they take a bit of a regression. Want to try to avoid players on the north side of 30. Normally they'll see a regression as well. Always want to shoot for upside. I love your point about, avoiding players if you can from bottom feeding teams. Because again, you know what I mean? Obviously they're not in the best situations. They're in that situation for a reason in regards to, their team. But, I do think, and I'm a big believer in having, some form of balance. To your point, if you go running back first, especially in the PPR, you want to make sure you nab a top tier receiver with the next 2 picks, most likely, unless something wild or fluky happens where you have an opportunity to grab 2 of the top, 4 running backs, or 2 of the top, 5 receivers, then maybe, you change the strategy. A lot of the stuff too, depends on what people in front of you do and how the draft board starts to fall for you. So pay attention to that, but, stay true to obviously, what you're trying to accomplish there. And I think, for the most part, the first round should go pretty similarly in all leagues, especially if you're in PPR. But yeah, don't do something stupid. There's no need to reach, but do beware of players. And we're going to I'll tell you players that I think you should probably avoid just because of age, injury history, just historically what players have done after, really good or productive years. Not that they're going to be bad, but usually you see a bit of a drop off.
And to Todd's point, the rub is, for example, someone who I love is James Cook. The rub is you're going to draft him. He's I have a list over here. I don't know where he is on this list, but he's on the list, which is like mid to late 3rd round. If you just go straight down the list based on top 36, if you're in a 12-team league, he's there because of how many touchdowns he scored last year. He was cooking everyone, right? So even if he gets the same amount of carries and the same amount of catches and his touchdowns regress, then you overdrafted him. So if you're going, taking a player that sort of had a breakout season last year and you haven't seen him do it a few years in a row, like a Saquon Barkley, then there could be a potential regression, maybe a Baker Mayfield regression. I mean, Mark Andrews, I cut him in our league last year. I will never draft him again. And it still remains true. He played well towards the end of the season, but he had 4 targets a game. One would be in the red zone. He happened to catch it. Like, you can't draft someone in the first 4 rounds that gets 3 touches a game. You just can't, right? So something like that. Like, he's not going to have that many touchdowns on that many looks unless he gets volumes of targets that he got, years ago, and he doesn't get them now. So, that's something else to consider, to Todd's point. You want to have a philosophy too. Like, think about the people that are in your league. This might sound stupid, but I know there's a bunch of Cardinals fans in my league. I wouldn't ever think about drafting anyone on their team. You got a Packers fan, and he's going to draft Jordan Love 1,000,000%. Rink's going to draft Josh Allen 1,000,000%. So just take these people off your board. They're going to get him. I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor ends up with Aaron Rodgers, right? Because he's a Steelers fan. I won't draft any player because they're a Raiders player. In fact, it makes me not want to draft them, right? I only have 2 that I would draft. Obviously, I'm drafting Brock Bowers if he's there late 2nd, early 3rd, depending on how it goes, because he's a TE1 by a mile, 115 balls last year that he caught, barely scored touchdowns. The offense will be better. And then the number 2 receiver, who I think will probably be the number 1 receiver for them, is the Deontay Thornton Jr. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5" from Tennessee, the rookie, 4th-round pick. I mean, I actually watched part of the preseason game. He threw one crossing pattern to Jacoby Myers, and Jacoby Myers just like he's reliable. He can catch the ball. He's not getting separation. You know what I mean? He's a decent route runner, but this guy, this Deontay Thornton, I mean, he had caught a back shoulder catch where touchdown right up against the pylon where, I mean, you know, unless you trust that receiver, you're not making that throw. He was covered, right? And he toe tapped, got in, you know, he's 6'5". So maybe you draft him mid to like late, you know, like when you already have like, all right, I've got my starting receivers, I've got my running backs, I got my flex, I've taken a couple more people. Now there's like 3 or 4 more picks, and all you're doing is taking flyers.
Yep,
either taking your handcuffs or flyers. So I would say take Christian McCaffrey's handcuff, and I would say take this dude or a dude like this, because he could end up being the number 1 receiver, which doesn't mean he's going to catch 100 balls, but I mean, he could be a legitimate, like, you know, someone to fill in for you if someone gets hurt or during your bye weeks.
Yeah, and I look too. I mean, especially with running backs now, a lot of these folks, it's to your point about David Montgomery earlier, it's running back by committee at a lot of these places. And I'm even worried about Christian McCaffrey because they got Brian Robinson Jr., they got that other rookie. So, you know, I'm not sure if they're going to try to split the touches. And for someone like Christian McCaffrey, who, you know, is starting to, you know, I don't know if he's at his peak anymore, still a great player. I'm not saying he's a guy I'd avoid altogether, but I'd probably avoid him where a lot of people are going to pick him, which is, you know, in mid-first round. It makes me nervous with his injury history. And I think the 49ers are taking a step back this year personally. So
he's below 8 on this list that I have. He's 7.81 ADP across all the thing. Like I probably wouldn't take him in the second round.
Yeah. I'd be
maybe late second round if he's still there somehow. He won't be, but just because he's either going to win you your league or he's going to lose you your league if you take him. You can't take him. Like
he lost a lot of people their league last year. I'll tell you that right now. You know,
he lost me a league 3 years ago. Bad. He went down first game Thursday night. He was out for like 11 weeks, man. I'm not doing it. Also, here's my steals right here.
Let's hear.
I don't want to be the first pick. I wouldn't be mad if I was the 3rd pick, assuming CeeDee Lamb was still there. I love that. Dallas can't play defense to save their life. It's gonna be a volume passing team. I'll take that. Obviously, if I get Saquon at 5, fine. But what I really want is to be 7th or 8th, so I can take Nico Collins and I can take Drake London back to back. I start with those 2 receivers, and I'm going to be in a great spot. I want that bad, right?
PPR,
because then, in PPR, those are high vol. Michael Penix Jr. is going to help Drake London out a lot. It's his 4th year. He's already, he's excelling. Yeah, CJ Stroud. Houston's just going to throw the ball a ton, man. So I want those 2 guys. I'm taking Nico Collins over Amon-Ra. I'm taking him over Christian McCaffrey. Taking him over
Malik
Neighbors. And Malik Neighbors, dude, he's like Brock Bowers. They don't have anyone else to throw to. Their quarterback, Geno Smith's way better, but their quarterback's trash, right? And he's just going to be a high volume target, not a high percentage catch, because they're just not going to be good, and he's going to be, the safety or the linebackers always shadowing him. On top of that, I'm taking Collins over all those guys, and then I'm going to take Drake London over like Achane or Brian Thomas, AJ Brown, which might not be a popular take, but I don't want. I had AJ Brown last year, and obviously his output was great, but there's periods of the game or games where he disappears because Saquon Barkley's so good that if he stays healthy, like why the hell would you throw the ball? You just don't need to.
No, you don't need to. And you got Devontae Smith, who's also a more than capable receiver. It might be somebody that you maybe take instead in a later round. I love Drake London this year. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a beast, and he's going to be. But I'm not mad at Drake London. The Brian Thomas thing's interesting because you got a new coach out there in Jacksonville who they're hoping can untap the potential of Trevor Lawrence. So maybe Trevor Lawrence is a later round pick at quarterback if you're going to wait and wait on a quarterback, and you just hope that a new offensive system, offensive-minded coach, over there in Jacksonville can help untap that. But I'm a big fan of Drake London. I think he is, a receiver that's going to go later than he probably should. He's going to have a better year than a lot of these guys.
So if I can go Nico, Drake London, right now, I obviously based on what I said, I didn't do my receiver, 2 running backs, vice versa. you obviously need a running back. So you hope, here's a list of people I hope to get. Chase Brown in the 3rd round, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, right?
Yep.
Maybe even Chuba. So if I get one of those guys, and then
or maybe even Kyron Williams. I don't know. He gets,
he's
injury,
up there too.
Yeah, I mean, the injury thing scares me, but if you can get your hands on him.
Well, they just paid him, right? He's going to ball out.
Yeah.
So, and then if I can get, let's say I get Bucky Irving or Chase Brown, then I can get Kenneth Walker III, right?
You can
if that happens, bro, it doesn't even matter. Like after that, you have such a solid team. You have bell cow running backs. You have very pass forward offenses, wide receivers. So that list of running backs that I gave you are all people. You're obviously not taking them in the 1st or probably the 2nd round, but those are the next tier of running backs that you want, right?
Yep.
So Chuba, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, all those guys you want bad, right? Give me one of those guys. That can be my RB1 or 2, right? And then the next round, also, if you can steal Mike Evans in the late 3rd, early 4th, I mean, the injury issues there are a gravesite. Godwin won't be back for a minute. And then the other homie's out to week 10, which gives you maybe the steal of the season is Egbuka, right? Maybe you get him.
I love him.
Maybe you take him, as early as the 8th. You might be able to get him in the 9th or 10th round. Obviously, this video will air after my draft. So people, won't get to see what I'm doing. But then after that, if I got those running backs.
I was going to say.
No, I'm not. There's no way I would say that. No.
All right.
So I like in round 6, I would love Calvin Ridley, right? I would love Calvin Ridley. Their team sucks. They got Cam Ward, who's going to be throwing the ball a ton, and he's going to unlock as the season goes. He's by far the number 1 volume target. Then you go Jalen Warren out of Pittsburgh, right? You go Pearsall.
I love
on
Pearsall.
That list. And then I know Todd got Tucker Kraft. That's my tight end target. If I can't get Bowers or McBride, I don't want the rest of them. I'm just going to go get Tucker Kraft or Tyler Warren, right? Because you take Hawkinson or Laporta or Andrews or one of these guys in the 4th round, and if they don't get volume targets, then it's terrible. You could go and get a guy that's going to get you 8 to 10 instead of their possible 12. So these are some of my favorite players. Cortland Sutton, if I can figure out a way to get him, in the 5th or 6th round somehow, he's going to be a volume target guy. Bo Nix is looking great, and then Josh Downs, of course, always. Jalen Waddle. These are my favorite players. As I go through, once I get through the first 3 or 4 rounds, I'm only looking at this list of players that I just gave you, right? And of course, if you see someone tumble, then you have to make an adjustment, but that's any draft, right? Yeah. But if everything happens the way it's supposed to, and people just pick based on the list, what they won't, because they'll pick all their favorite players and the people on their team. So Ricky's probably going to pick Tucker Kraft in the 5th round or something, and it'll fuck that up for me. It's whatever. But what you do is, if that's your goal is Tucker Kraft or Tyler Warren, the second one of them goes, you have to take the other one with the very next pick that you have.
Yeah.
You have to.
I love it.
You have to. And then I will say draft Colston Loveland if you have one of them later on, just because he has a high upside and just in case it doesn't really work out with these younger guys. But that's sort of, and I may take Drake May in the last round and just let it ride. So
let it ride. There's some good quarterbacks you can get. People will reach on quarterbacks. Probably in the 2nd round, you're going to see Josh Allen go. You're going to see Lamar Jackson go. You can be patient and kind of fill out your, my recommendation is fill out your board in regards to your running backs and wide receivers. There'll be some really good quarterbacks available in the later rounds, man. But in the later rounds, people that I like. I mean, he's going to go early, but I love Omarion Hampton over there at the Chargers. They're going to want to run the ball over there. Highly talented.
He'll have a lion's share too. He's going to have all the carries, man.
He will have all the carries. Later on, I love RJ Harvey over there in Denver. Pro style offense. They'll run the ball a lot. With Bo Nix and Sean Payton out there. So I think he's somebody you can get in the mid or later rounds, I guess, probably mid round. I think he'll go. Ricky Pearsall, man. I think you got Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's gone. Ayuk, right, coming off that injury. I think
he's out
Pearsall,
a few months, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Pearsall's going to be, and from everything I'm hearing out of that, the training camp and through preseason, they like Pearsall a lot. He's taking a step. So I love, Ricky Pearsall as well. So, yeah, I mean, obviously play the board. Oh yeah. And Jordan Mason too. If you're looking for a running back a little later, I think Aaron Jones, as great as he's been, again, you're looking at McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, and their age. I think Aaron Jones will take a bit of a step back. You got younger, more live legs in Jordan Mason. You got JJ McCarthy, who's going to go out there and sling the ball a little bit and throw to Jefferson, but they're going to want to run the ball a lot, as well. So I think Jordan Mason's the guy to look at. And Zach Charbonnet, as always, depending on Kenneth Walker's health, they still use that two-headed monster. That's another running back that you can target in later rounds to help fill out that roster. But yeah, I love Drake May. They got some weapons. I think Stephon Diggs, he's, if you get him in the later rounds, it's a decent pickup. They got him some weapons in the draft. I think Drake May is going to take a step, this year. I think that New England's going to be a lot better. Got better on the offensive line. So I think Drake May, if you want to take a flyer on a quarterback later, I say Drake May, and Trevor Lawrence because of just the potential. Trevor Lawrence has always had the potential, hasn't been good at all, really. So you want to see what he can do with the new coach. But, that's what I would look at. Let me ask you this, man. Who are some players that people are going to reach for that you would avoid at this point? I can give you one. I would avoid, again, not completely avoid, but avoid in regards to where these players are normally taken.
Mark Andrews by a mile. Andrews, just don't draft him.
No,
just don't.
I'm avoiding, Tyreek Hill too, depending on where he's going. A lot of times he goes higher than he should. I think, look, father time, he's still going to be explosive and athletic, but, I think McDaniel, that whole thing's a mess over in Miami. I don't think they're going to be that good.
Jalen Waddle might be that dude, though. There's a chance that Tyreek Hill is either not very involved or they dump him before the deadline. And then what else do you do, man? He's the only player left. If Devon Achane gets hurt at all, I mean, who else are you gonna? You're gonna get smoked in every game.
Make chance, so. He's
he's injured
back
now, I think. But.
Yeah, he gets injured a lot. So you're talking about Mark Andrews. A tight end I would target going back to Denver is Evan Ingram. I think he's in a situation. I think Bo Nix, Ingram has talent. I think Sean Payton's going to want to utilize the tight ends. Bo Nix will use Evan Ingram as a security blanket. I love Evan Ingram, in later rounds if you're looking for a tight end. And the likes of, obviously, McBride and Bowers are gone. Don't reach on Travis Kelce. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying? They're talking about the wrong side of, getting older and 30 and all that. He's at the end. Didn't look great at the end of last year.
Xavier Worthy is a great value pick depending on – so, you go Xavier Worthy, James Cook. I'm not saying fade James Cook or fade David Montgomery, but we just don't know depending on the value, right? Because if James Cook is getting drafted based on his performance last year, you don't want him. If he's drafted where he, a little bit later. Also, Scary Terry, man, out of DC because they have Debo. He hasn't played a snap yet, which means, I don't know if he's going to extend. I hit up some of my boys from there, and they all say that he's going to sign, but he hasn't played at all. And there's historically people that don't play in the preseason at all, especially with this. It's going to take him a little bit of time. You got a second-year quarterback who, by the way, I love Jaden McDaniels. I had him last year. That team's trash, and you put Jaden McDaniels on it, and it's good, right? So they added Debo, which is nice. Yeah. He's a beast. Here's what I'm saying. You have that top tier of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson who've done this shit over time. If Jaden Daniels is there, and you could take him in late second, early third, or you can pick up Hurts in fourth or fifth. I'm taking Jalen Hurts, right? He's still going to have 10. Jaden Daniels is a beast. You just don't really know with that team, right? Because it's young, and it's never been good, but it's the same. I mean, I don't know. I'm just not taking him late second, early third. I'm just not doing it. I'm not taking him with Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. So to answer your question, I'm not taking Jaden Daniels unless I can get him maybe late third, early fourth. If he falls, okay, fine. Take a flyer on. So those are some of the people I would worry about based on where they're at. It doesn't mean they're bad, but you fade where they're going to go, not what their value is.
And expect regressions, man. Expect regression from Saquon Barkley. He'll still have a great year, but he had a historic year last year. Expect regressions from Scary Terry. Again, he's 29. You're looking at, he'll
be 30 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's going to be 30 in 2 weeks again. You want to look at players at that 30 mark. You want to be on the south end of 30, right? So Christian McCaffrey, 29 and a half, I believe, is going to be 30, during the year. You just want to be wary, of those players. And, Jaden Daniels, you might see a bit of a regression. just like you did with CJ Stroud after his amazing rookie year, right? Teams have tape on you. It's a little different. He's a great quarterback. He's going to be fine, right? But, you just want to be wary. Tyreek Hill, like, historically been great. Look at their situations. Look at their age. And, you just can't expect to have the same kind of output that some of these players had last year. So, yeah, man, those are, some tidbits on our end.
I want to throw out a couple late ones. JCM for the Redskins, right? They just traded Brian Robinson to the Niners. So it's going to be him or Eckler. This kid, he's young.
I like him better than Eckler.
I think he'll end up with the lion's share. I'm taking him over Eckler, although maybe you take both if you're okay. And then super late, not super late, I suppose, but potentially Josh Palmer for the Bills. He's like really the only person they added on offense. And they run 3 receivers, a tight end and a running back. I like Josh Palmer. I mean, he could end up like kind of splitting targets with Khalil Shakur. I like him a lot. Obviously, pick up Tyler Algier. Whether or not you have
got him yesterday.
But Bijan or not, whether or not you have Bijan or not, take him because if Bijan goes down, it's a wrap. If David
he'll still get carries,
yes, and he'll still get carries. So those are some late ones.
I mean, if
you're in a real deep league, Marvin Mims Jr. just because he's WR2, even though he can't really, he's not nearly So, but anyways, that's all I got, man.
I got one for you though. As a Jet fan, I'm just telling y'all, Braylon Allen in the later rounds. This is why the Jets are going to be a run-heavy team. Braylon Allen has looked better than Breece Hall throughout the preseason. So
is Braylon Allen going to get north of 50% of the snaps, though? You think?
I think he's going to get.
They're saying 40. That.
And they're probably going to use him as a goal line back. You talk about what they did because the Jets now have the quarterback's coach from Detroit as their offensive coordinator. And obviously you got Aaron Glenn from Detroit as their head coach. Two-headed monster. They're looking to do what they did with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and try to mimic that in New York with Breece Hall and with Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen has looked, he's 20, he's young. He's looked like a beast. He's explosive. He's just looked better than Bryce, and Bryce hasn't always been the healthiest, but Braylon Allen, and he's going to get carries regardless. But if Bryce somehow, and Bryce has been the topic of trade talks a little bit this offseason. I don't think they'll trade him, but I do think they're going to use Braylon Allen quite a bit. So, if you can snag up Braylon Allen, that's a great pick. And the Jets are going to run the hell out of that ball, man. So,
they should.
That's my sleeper.
Justin Fields, he's not. They got to run it. They're all, whether it's him or someone else,
Yep, and because of that, you want to, as much as I love him, Garrett Wilson, I'm not sure how many targets he's going to get, and they're going to shade coverage to Garrett Wilson because the Jets have probably the worst wide receiver 2 and probably the worst wide receiver room in the league outside of Garrett.
No, so not only the Raiders is the worst wide receiver room in the league.
Okay, then all right, then Jets got the second, but Garrett Wilson, as great as he is, the Jets aren't going to throw the ball a ton, and when they are in passing situations, they're going to shade coverage the other team towards Garrett Wilson to make like Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds, these other receivers try to make plays against the Jets. So I'd stay away from Garrett Wilson, until maybe the later rounds, and stay away on it. Also, lastly, probably Patrick Mahomes, as early as he normally goes, as great as he is. I'd probably stay away from him. You get better value in the later rounds with another quarterback with some of the
take Drake May instead. Also, Alvin Kamara, an early 4th-round pick based on ADP. I wouldn't touch him at all. That team's going to be so bad. Don't touch Chris Olave. Just don't. Stay away from the Saints. Nobody on the Saints should get drafted. You just can't.
Yeah, agree.
You just can't. I mean, they're going to be so bad.
Unless you're going to get, them in the late rounds, I agree.
Of course.
Olave's got no one to throw him the ball. He's had injury history. He's probably going to go higher than
they don't even know who their starting quarterback is.
Yeah.
They don't even know. They don't know.
I think
it's probably Spencer Rattler, but they don't know.
I agree. Yeah, they don't know.
So this Olave in the middle rounds, sure, but you can't.
Later rounds, no.
You can't, dude. You can't.
No. And they're probably going to have a quarterback change at some point during the year. It's going to be all fucked up.
I bet
they might want to suck.
In the first 4 games, they're going to change the quarterback.
And they probably want to suck, man. There's a great quarterback class coming out next year in college football, which we'll get to on another pod, but they probably want to suck, right? So avoid them.
Avoid Zay Flowers for where he goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get him later than his ADP, but I would avoid Zay Flowers. There's so many guys I would take over Zay Flowers. I made a list of them, actually. Where are they? Hold on one second. I made too many notes this year. Okay. Where is it? Oh, man, I want to give everyone this, man, because I did so much work. I got too many pages of notes. You know what I mean? I did so many.
With the new fan.
I can't find it, man. I'll say this. Calvin Ridley over DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, J-Mo, and Cortland Sutton. Calvin Ridley, because Cam Ward and him are going to figure that out towards the end of the year, and they're going to get smashed.
Don't hate that.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, just like I'm probably taking every one of the receivers I just named over Zay Flowers.
Don't hate that.
All right. Well,
take us later.
Longer than we were supposed to. But hey, make sure if you only have 30 minutes, watch this shit, write everything down, follow the receiver, running back, receiver, and then have your list of people you want to get late rounds, because those are the ones that are going to make the difference. Those are the ones you dump one of those guys in your starter for, a tier 1 starter. That's how that works for the teams that are struggling. So good shit, man. I appreciate it. Obviously, we got through everything I think we wanted to do. Guess that's it.
Can't teach taste.
Peace. Can't teach taste. Peace.